The vast expanse of space stretched out before Captain Arya Solis, a glittering tapestry of stars, distant planets, and the swirling storm of Clixo below. She stood alone at the observation deck of Horizon Station, her arms crossed, eyes locked on the roiling clouds beneath the gas giant. The station, a marvel of human engineering, hummed around her as if to remind her of the purpose that had brought them all here. Humanity was venturing into the unknown, and Arya was determined to make sure it was more than just a temporary foothold in the stars. The soft buzz of her comm unit broke the silence. "Captain Solis," the voice of Lieutenant Ralston crackled through. "The Zarathian delegation is about to arrive." Arya exhaled slowly, her breath forming a faint mist in the cold air of the observation room. She had prepared for this moment for years, yet now, it felt different. The stakes had never been this high. She straightened her uniform, brushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear, and headed for the meeting room. Inside the diplomatic chamber, the team was already gathered. Engineers, translators, analysts, every last detail had been planned. Arya's eyes scanned the room, settling on her first officer, Commander Jarvis. He gave her a brief, acknowledging nod. "How's the situation?" she asked. "We've got a translator in place, but the Zarathians, they're unpredictable. Their culture's unlike anything we've encountered. They don't speak in linear terms. Time, emotions, they perceive it all differently." Arya nodded, absorbing the information. She had read the reports, but nothing truly prepared you for the unknown. The door opened, and the Zarathian delegation entered. They were taller than humans, with long, shimmering skin that seemed to shift in color, catching the light in ways that suggested both organic and artificial elements. Their eyes, large and black, shimmered with an intelligence far beyond any human comprehension. Their leader, a being with elegant limbs and intricate markings across its body, stepped forward. It spoke without words, its voice transmitted directly into their minds. "Captain Arya Solis," it intoned, its thoughts echoing inside her head. "We have come, as promised, to explore the possibility of alliance." Arya stood firm, projecting confidence. "We welcome you," she thought back. "Humanity seeks to learn, to grow with the stars." The Zarathian leader's mind voice swirled around her, unsettling but not hostile. "Your people are new. Young. We will see if you are capable of living up to your promises." Before Arya could respond, a sudden interruption came from across the room. A figure, sleek, alien, and unmistakably Zalier, stepped into the chamber, his presence instantly commanding the attention of everyone. Garen Zar, the leader of the Zalier Dominion, leaned against the doorway with a smug grin that matched the arrogance in his eyes. His species was ancient, its empire vast and coldly calculated, yet their disdain for humanity was well known. Garen's intrusion was no accident. "Captain Solis," he said, his voice oozing condescension, "I see your negotiations have begun." "How quaint." Arya's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. "Garen," she greeted him, her tone clipped. "This is a private meeting. I didn't expect to see you here." The Zalier leader stepped fully into the room, his eyes flicking over the Zarathians as if inspecting a curious artifact. "I couldn't help but notice the little humans trying to talk their way into something they don't understand." He turned his gaze to Arya, a slow smile curling his lips. "You'll forgive me if I don't share your optimism." One of the Zarathians, clearly agitated by the intrusion, took a step forward, their mind voice sharp. "The Zalier do not belong here. They are disruptors, not negotiators." Garen's smile widened, and he tilted his head. "Disruptors? No, no. We are the stabilizers of the galaxy. You will understand, in time." Arya's patience was tested, but she held firm. "The Zalier have no authority over us. You're here because we allowed it." She shifted her gaze back to the Zarathians. "This is between us." For a brief moment, the Zarathians stood still, their massive eyes flicking between Arya and Garen. It was impossible to read them. Their way of thinking was beyond human comprehension. Finally, their leader's voice echoed in Arya's mind. Perhaps it is time to reconsider. Your people are persistent. But will you prove yourselves? Or will the Zaliar's predictions come true? A chill ran down Arya's spine as she processed the implications of their words. The Zarathians were as cautious as they were enigmatic, but now, they were questioning humanity's ability to forge an alliance. Before she could respond, an alarm blared across the station. The low rumble of the siren set her heart racing. Not again, she muttered, and quickly turned to Jarvis. Check the systems. Now. The atmosphere shifted abruptly. The Zarathian delegation seemed unfazed, their thoughts unreadable. Garen's grin deepened, but he didn't speak. Instead, his cold eyes watched as Arya's team scrambled into action. Minutes later, a report came in. The station's primary power grid had been sabotaged. Traces of a highly advanced, stealthy alien technology were found on the main conduits. Arya's heart sank. Zaliar, she whispered under her breath, the realization hitting her with the force of a hammer. Garen Zar had made his move. He wasn't content to just observe, he was actively trying to sabotage humanity's first steps into the galaxy. Captain, this is bad, Jarvis said, his voice tight with urgency. We can't fix this in time. Arya stood motionless for a moment, considering her options. Then, her mind snapped back into focus. We don't give in to sabotage. We don't fold to threats. Get everything back online, and I'll deal with the delegation. She turned to the Zarathians, who were still silently observing the commotion. This is an unfortunate development, the Zarathian leader's voice echoed in her mind. We will watch closely, Captain. You must decide how you handle this, whether you are worthy of trust. Arya's pulse quickened, but she kept her composure. We will prove ourselves. Humanity will not be intimidated. Garen laughed softly from the corner of the room. Bold words for a species that's barely out of diapers. Arya stepped forward, meeting his gaze directly. Perhaps, Garen, you've misjudged us. She nodded to Jarvis. Fix the grid. Now. As the room fell into tense silence, Arya knew this was just the beginning. The sabotage was no accident, and Garen Zar wasn't just a nuisance, he was a direct threat. But as she looked at the Zarathians and felt their unblinking gaze on her, she understood something critical. The Zaliar might be powerful, but humanity had something they never would, an unyielding will to survive, adapt, and grow. And Arya Solis was going to make sure the galaxy learned that lesson. The morning after the sabotage was no easier than the night before. Horizon Station, a sprawling metropolis in the cold silence of space, buzzed with activity, but something was off. The air was thick with tension, the scent of machinery, faint ozone, and the bitter tang of fear. Arya Solis stood in the command center, her hands resting on the smooth metal console, eyes fixed on the holographic map before her. Every readout, every shift in color, spoke of a growing danger, an unseen threat that had slithered its way into their operations. Grid stable for now, Lieutenant Ralston reported, his voice sharp with fatigue. But I don't like how it went down. Too clean. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Arya nodded, her eyes narrowing. The sabotage had been a warning, but it was more than that. It was a message, one that only one species in the galaxy had the resources to send. The Zaliar, she muttered, her thoughts as cold as the void outside the station. They're behind this. Ralston didn't argue. Everyone in the room knew it. They'd been expecting this from the moment the Zaliar had arrived. The Dominion's strategy had always been about dominance, and now it was clear, they weren't just watching, they were actively trying to break humanity's foothold in the stars. We'll keep pushing forward, Arya said firmly, her voice rising to cut through the rising sense of panic. They think we're fragile. They think they can break us with a little sabotage. She turned toward the rest of her team, determination lighting her eyes. We'll prove them wrong. Get our systems back online, but be ready for anything. Her team went to work, fingers flying over consoles, diagnostics running, and power slowly trickling back into the station. Arya's mind raced, but there was no time to lose. The Zarathians had yet to commit fully to the alliance, and this sabotage only made their decision more uncertain. She tapped her communicator. "Commander Jarvis, meet me in the briefing room." Moments later, Jarvis strode in, his expression grim. He had always been a rock, steady and reliable, but even he couldn't hide the edge in his eyes now. "What's the status?" Arya asked, motioning for him to take a seat. "We've patched up the major faults," he began, "but I'm not comfortable with how smoothly it all came together. There are pieces we can't trace, parts of the system that shouldn't have been compromised." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Whoever did this had inside knowledge." "Great," Arya muttered. "So we're dealing with more than just a few saboteurs. It's strategic. They want to disrupt us, shake our resolve." "Exactly," Jarvis agreed, rubbing the back of his neck. "But there's something more. The Zarathians. Their leader, Naxori, I can feel it. He's watching us. I don't think he trusts us anymore." Arya's brow furrowed. She had expected caution from the Zarathians, but this? If they were wavering in their commitment, it could jeopardize everything. Humanity's first chance to join the galactic community could slip away in an instant. "I'll talk to Naxori," she said, standing. "Maybe I can salvage the situation." The Zarathian delegation had been quieter since the sabotage, their silent presence a stark contrast to the frantic activity of the station. Arya made her way to the secure diplomatic room, her mind already racing through possible strategies. Naxori stood at the far end of the room, his form shimmering like liquid light. The others of his species moved in a fluid, almost predatory way, but Naxori himself remained still, his immense black eyes focused on Arya with a detached curiosity. "You're late, Captain Solis," Naxori's voice echoed in her mind, like the ringing of distant chimes. "I'm not here to waste time," Arya replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "The situation is more complicated than we anticipated. Someone's trying to undermine our talks, and I believe I know who." Naxori's gaze shifted. "The Zalier," he thought, his words more statement than question. Arya stiffened. "They've made their intentions clear. They want to keep humanity on the sidelines, far from the galactic stage. But I won't let that happen." "Your confidence is admirable," Naxori responded, though the tone was laced with doubt. "But the Zalier's reach is vast. What makes you think your species can withstand their manipulation?" "Because we don't break," Arya said, her voice steady. "We adapt. We fight. Humanity isn't like the others in this galaxy. We're unpredictable. We don't play by the rules, but we're not weak." Naxori seemed to ponder this, his movements slow and deliberate. The silence stretched, and Arya could feel the weight of his judgment upon her. "We shall see, Captain Solis." Just as she thought the conversation was drawing to a close, a sudden beep from her communicator cut through the air, sharp and insistent. Arya looked down, her face paling as the alert flashed across her screen. "Unidentified ship entering our orbit. Unregistered. Weapons active." Her pulse spiked. "Damn it," she muttered under her breath. The Zalier weren't waiting around to see how the negotiations would play out. They were making their move. "Stay here," Arya said to Naxori, her voice clipped. She turned on her heel and strode out of the room, her mind already calculating the necessary steps. Back in the command center, the situation was escalating. The unidentified ship had locked its trajectory toward Horizon Station, and the system was rapidly going into lockdown. Area's tactical officers were scrambling to verify the threat, but the reality was clear: this wasn't a simple intrusion. This was an attack. "Captain, we have a clear lock on the ship," Lieutenant Ralston reported, his fingers a blur over the controls. "It's Zalier, no doubt. They're jamming our sensors." Arya's hand clenched into a fist. "Now they're going to play it dirty." "Prepare all defensive measures," she ordered. "Activate shields. Lock all weapons on that ship. We're not giving them the upper hand." "Shielding activated," Ralston confirmed, his voice tense. "Weapons locked." Arya stared at the holographic projection of the approaching vessel, the cold, calculated symbols of Zalier weaponry outlined against the station's readout. It was a statement, a warning. But the message was clear: we control this. Not you. And yet, humanity wasn't done yet. Arya turned to the crew. The Zalier want to test us. But I'll be damned if we let them think we're afraid. We're going to stand our ground. She looked directly at Ralston. Prepare a counterstrike. We won't fire first, but we will be ready if they make a move. As the countdown began, a thought struck Arya: this isn't just about power. It's about proving that humanity isn't just a species to be ignored. The Zalier had miscalculated if they thought a show of force would make them back down. Humanity had something they didn't: resolve. The first shot was fired from the enemy ship, a bright flash of energy streaking toward the station. But Arya had anticipated it. The shields held firm, absorbing the energy. The crew braced for impact, but Horizon Station remained intact. Return fire, Arya commanded, her voice cold with determination. This wasn't the time for diplomacy. It was time to show the galaxy that humanity wasn't backing down. As the battle began in earnest, Arya's mind raced. She had no illusions that this was the end of the conflict. The Zalier wouldn't stop. But humanity was learning fast, faster than the Zalier ever expected. And Arya Solis was determined to make sure they paid for underestimating her species. The atmosphere on Horizon Station had become thick with anticipation. The hum of the engines, the quiet rush of the ventilation systems, the clatter of distant footsteps, each sound carried a weight far heavier than usual. As Arya stood at the command center, her fingers drummed nervously against the console, her eyes flicking between the tactical displays and the approaching Zalier vessel. They had made their move. Now, it was her turn. "Captain, shields are holding, but the enemy's not backing down," Lieutenant Ralston reported, his voice tight with tension. The flashing indicators on the display screen confirmed his words. Zalier weaponry had already caused several minor breaches, and the station's defense grid was pushing its limits. Arya's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the damage. She had expected a fight, but not like this. The Zalier ship was methodical, deliberate. Each strike, each calculated maneuver, was a message meant to wear them down. To force them into submission. Her jaw tightened. "Not on my watch." "Bring up the secondary cannons," she ordered, her voice cold and firm. "I want them in position. Don't fire unless they cross the line." Ralston hesitated for a moment, before acknowledging her order. "Aye, Captain." The second Zalier volley hit, shaking the station's framework. Sparks flew from the control panels as the crew braced for the impact. The deck vibrated beneath Arya's boots, but her resolve only solidified. She would not let them break her crew. She would not let them break humanity. "We need to act now," Arya said, turning to her first officer, Commander Jarvis. "Do we have any other options?" Jarvis ran a hand through his short, graying hair, his face lined with fatigue. "We've been keeping them off balance with our countermeasures, but it's only a matter of time before they pinpoint our weaknesses." Arya's gaze lingered on the tactical display. A part of her wanted to wait. To try and negotiate. To talk her way out of this. But the Zalier had made it clear they had no interest in diplomacy. They weren't here to listen. They were here to dominate. "Prepare the ion disruptors," she said, her tone decisive. "We'll hit them hard, disrupt their weapons systems." Jarvis nodded, already moving toward the control panel. "Aye, Captain." Arya turned back to the tactical display, her mind racing. Every calculation, every maneuver, had to be perfect. If they didn't strike now, they would lose everything. Humanity's first real step into the galaxy was at risk, and she wouldn't let it be crushed by the Zalier's arrogance. The ion disruptors powered up with a low, ominous hum, a pulsing light radiating from their cannons. The first officer's hands flew across the controls. "Ready on your mark." Arya steadied her breath. She had to be precise, decisive. One wrong move in Horizon Station could be reduced to rubble. Now, with a surge of energy, the ion beams shot forward, tearing through the black void between the station and the Zalier ship. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow as the energy surged toward its target. The Zalier ship returned fire immediately, but its weapons faltered mid-shot, the glowing beams flickering and dissipating in the vacuum of space. The disruptors had done their job. Direct hit. Their weapons systems are offline. Ralston shouted, his voice tinged with surprise. Arya allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, but the battle was far from over. The Zalier were nothing if not relentless. Their ship began to drift, trying to regain control, but the tide had already shifted. The humans had made their move. Now, the Zalier would have to decide whether to retreat or escalate. "We've got one shot," Arya said, turning to Jarvis. "We can't let them recover." "Ready, Captain," Jarvis confirmed. "Weapons are primed." Arya took a deep breath, the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. Fire. The station's main weapons cannons erupted with blinding force, a wave of destructive energy blasting toward the Zalier ship. The target shook violently as the barrage tore into its hull. The Zalier vessel struggled, its shields sputtering in and out of existence, but it was clear it wasn't going to withstand much longer. On the bridge, the atmosphere was electric. Arya watched the battle unfold, her heart pounding with adrenaline. She could feel the eyes of her crew on her, waiting for her next command. She was their leader, the one who had brought them this far, and she wouldn't back down now. "Their ship is disabled, Captain," Ralston reported, his voice tinged with disbelief. "We've got a hull breach. They're not moving." For a moment, silence reigned in the room. The crew let out a collective breath, but Arya's mind didn't ease. This wasn't a victory yet, not until she had confirmation from the Zarathians. She grabbed the communicator, connecting it directly to Naxori's delegation. "Naxori, do you copy?" There was a brief pause before the Zarathian leader's voice resonated in her mind. "Captain Solis." His tone was unreadable. "Your species has surprised us. The Zalier will not recover easily from this." Arya let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. "The Zalier think they can push humanity around. But we'll show them otherwise. You'll see that we stand firm, no matter the odds. I have seen enough to believe you." There was a slight pause. "We will consider your actions carefully. The Zarathians will be watching. And perhaps," he hesitated, "perhaps we will speak of a future for humanity among the stars." Arya's heart swelled at his words, but she didn't allow herself to relax. "Then let's ensure it's a future worth speaking of. We'll be waiting for your response." As the communication ended, Arya turned to her team. The Zalier might be down, but they were far from out. Yet humanity had made its first statement on the galactic stage, and it had been heard loud and clear. They would not back down. Not now. Not ever. Later that day, as the crew of Horizon Station began their work to stabilize the station and assess the damage, Arya stood at the observation window, gazing out at the cold expanse of space. The stars glimmered like distant promises, each one an uncharted world waiting to be discovered. She had taken the first step for humanity. The Zalier had learned that lesson the hard way, and the Zarathians had taken note. This was only the beginning. But one thing was certain, humanity had earned its place. It was no longer just a newcomer in the vastness of space. It was a force to be reckoned with. And Arya Solis was going to make sure everyone knew it.